Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbard. Today I'm very excited because I'm going to be doing my first actual review for the channel. What am I reviewing? Why, none other than the Japanese Game Gear exclusive Shining Force Gaiden, the Final Conflict. But not just the original release of the game, oh no, I'm not going to be taking a look at that. Instead, I'll be reviewing it based upon the fan translation that was released by Shining Force Central in 2005. First, a brief history lesson. Shining Force saw 3 titles released on the Game Gear in Japan: Shining Force Gaiden, Shining Force Gaiden 2, and this game, Shining Force Gaiden: The Final Conflict. Of the 3, only Shining Force Gaiden 2 saw release in the US for the Game Gear. It arrived as Shining Force: The Sword of Huzzah. But of course, it gets more complicated than that, because why wouldn't it? The first 2 Shining Force Gaiden titles were remade and packaged together for the Sega/Mega CD as Shining Force CD. Shining Force CD contains a bit more game after the 2 main scenarios, but it does not contain any material from Shining Force Gaiden: The Final Conflict, which came out after it did. Whew. How about a fun bit of personal history for this game? Well, here it is anyway. Around 1998 or 1999, I worked with a group that was attempting to translate this game. I served as the ROM hacker. I put in the English font, I replaced the opening Japanese text with complete English text, and I got some character and place names translated. Unfortunately, that was about as far as I made it, as my ROM hacking skills were not up to the task of dumping the complete compressed Japanese script and reinserting a new English script. Thankfully, where my group and many others had failed, Shining Force Central succeeded wildly, and they released their complete translation of this game in 2005, which is exactly 10 years after the game was released in, you guessed it, 1995. They also translated scenarios 2 and 3 of Saturn's Shining Force 3. You know, if you're keeping score. With all that out of the way, let's talk about the game itself. All 3 Shining Force Gaiden titles take place between Shining Force 1 and 2 on the Genesis. They use a few of the same characters and relatives of characters that appear in those games. The Final Conflict, in particular, brings back its main villain from another game in the series, which I won't spoil. The plot of this game revolves around a team of heroes chasing down the villain before they have a chance to do something terrible. And since the plot is of a chasing someone variety, it's pretty breezy and moves along quickly. To those familiar with the genre, but not Shining Force, the series is, on the surface, quite similar to Fire Emblem and Final Fantasy Tactics. Drill down a little deeper, and you'll find that Shining Force is much more user-friendly than those games and has a much quicker pace while retaining strategic turn-based gameplay. Speaking of turns, in this game, each character gets a turn based on their stats. So unlike other srpgs, you don't move all your characters and your turn, let the enemy move all their characters and then their turn. Nope, this is much more streamlined. So you might see one of your guys go, then an enemy, then 2 of your guys, then 3 of theirs, then 1 of yours, etc. For land-based characters, which is most of them, movement is affected by surface type, meaning that characters will move more slowly through trees and even more slowly through mountains than they do over plains. Now, trees and mountains will also affect your character's stats and might provide extra defense. Flyers avoid both the increases and decreases to stats altogether. They have no land effect, which can be both good and bad. Characters get experience points immediately and level up right there on the spot when they collect enough. Experience is proportional though, meaning that as characters gain levels, the same enemies are worth fewer experience points when you damage or kill them. This prevents you from making one super-powered character and encourages you to develop your entire team. Really though, it's still relatively easy to play favorites. The strategic gameplay of Shining Force is easier to come to grips with than many other games in the genre. You still have to know which weapon types and spells are effective against which enemies. However, this game doesn't relentlessly punish you for making a mistake the way other games in the genre do. This doesn't mean you can just rush in and bash all the enemies without thinking about who to position where. That usually won't work. It just means that you won't spend as much time doing battles over because you didn't quite realize a few of your characters were just in range of a devastating attack. Oh yeah, there's also no permadeath. In your face, Fire Emblem! Shining Force Gaiden: The Final Conflict is pretty short. This particular playthrough took me roughly 12 hours, and I had to redo 3 battles, one of which was not my fault, I swear. I egressed on the second part of a 2-part battle, thinking I'd come back on part 2, but nope, had to start it over from part 1. With more familiarity, I'm sure this game can be finished in under 10 hours. Yes, it's short, but bear in mind that this was a portable srpg from 1995 that was played on a system with terrible battery life. One quick change to the formula of the Genesis and Saturn Shining Force games I'll mention is that there are no towns to explore in this game. The gameplay flow is usually as simple as watch a cutscene, go to a battle, go to camp and heal up and save, and then if you're lucky, you'll also find a shop there to purchase equipment or items. And then you repeat that loop. Now this is fine, because other strategy RPG games kind of utilize the same structure, but it's just different for Shining Force, which normally has typical RPG towns that you explore in between battles. Let's talk about the graphics. They're only kinda meh. This is a later release for the Game Gear, but frankly it doesn't look as good as quite a few other genre games on the system. The main map graphics and characters just seem awfully low color, and the super low resolution of the Game Gear causes it to be kinda hard to make out players and enemies during the battle scenes. Everything just looks a tad sloppy. The graphics are by no means bad, they are just average. What about sound? You know, those noises that come out of the system's speaker. Yeah. Anyway, the effects are understated and fine. They're quite similar to those in the Genesis releases. The music is not at all bad for the Game Gear's ancient PSG. In fact, it features several songs from prior games, particularly Shining Force 2. Now, they don't sound as good as they do on the Genesis, but, you know, they're okay. Finally, the translation itself. How is it? Absolutely fantastic. There's really no way you would know that this was not handled professionally by Sega. I found no grammar mistakes, no graphical glitches, no crashes, no bugs of any type during my complete playthrough. I can't vouch for its accuracy because my Japanese language skills are not the greatest, but I can tell you that you'll have a perfectly fine experience with it. Now, the big moment. Yes, I'm going to give this game a review score. I'll use a 0 to 10 scale, 0 being the worst, 10 being the best, and none of that 0.5 bull. Get ready to hate me for my review score of... drumroll... 7! Yes, 7 out of 10. Why? Haven't you been paying attention? Fine, I'll explain it. To sum up, Shining Force Gaiden: The Final Conflict is a quick, fun, breezy strategy RPG. What holds it back from a higher score? A few things. The game is quite short for the genre, clocking in at around 10 to 12 hours. There's not a ton of substance. The story is quite simple, but the translation is excellent. The graphics are only just kind of average. The music is a bit above average. In the end, what I did was take all of those things, chuck them into a big bowl, mix it around for a bit, and voila! 7 out of 10. Magnifique. But seriously, that does not mean don't play it. 7 is a good score, okay? Shining fans will especially appreciate this game. It'll be a little more meaningful if you've completed certain prior games in the series before this one, but you could still play through this entire game and appreciate it either way. You won't be hopelessly lost or anything if you only play this one. It's a good, solid game, and is part of one of the most storied srpg series ever. so despite some flaws here and there, it's definitely worth a playthrough. And that brings us to the end of another video. What do you think of the Shining Force series? Are you a fan? What about ROM hacks and translations in general? What's your opinion? Go ahead and let me know in the comments. With that, I will say thank you for watching, and see me later.